All right, continuing along in our series, gonna do Andre with Jersey Devils. So this is like number 11. So however you want to do that, yeah, five and then one. So yeah, number 11. Um, Kind of going through it. So yeah, there's some talent definitely on this team, especially on the top end. So number two nomination. Probably, I'm going to go with steal of the draft. This is definitely the steal of the draft. Justin Jefferson for 57. I don't know. I mean, maybe it was because it was so early and people were hesitant because it's a wide receiver. But, like, man, getting Jefferson for that cheap is crazy. So, Jefferson, I mean, at this point, he's the best. He's the best wide receiver in football. With Cup's injuries, Chase has got to compete with T. Higgins. I like Jordan Addison, the rookie they drafted, but Jefferson's a monster. 1,800 yards last year, 9 touchdowns. Like, he's the top scoring wide receiver. He's in an offense that feeds him. He's got a pass happy quarterback and offensive coordinator. Like, everything goes his way. He's the clear, undisputed number one guy. And he's in the heart of his prime. He's only 24. He hasn't even signed an extension yet. So, getting him on that cheap a deal, like that cheap, is just wild. And it's especially interesting because, like, when the Rams won their title, like, Cooper Kupp had a monster historic year, and Jefferson's kind of, like, taken that mantle now, 2 years later. And I don't know. I guess because it was so early and people were just like surprised. But I mean, there were some good deals on receivers. Some guys in the 30s, but like Jefferson's better than them. He's better than all of them. Getting him for 57 is such like that's probably like at least $20 cheaper than he ought to have gone. He ought to have definitely gone around $75, but no one wanted to pay that. Even if he hit 70, it would have been worth it. So like 57 is just the best deal in our fantasy draft by a lot, and getting that cash savings on such an elite player so early was really, really helpful. I don't think he'll have another 1,800 yard season. I mean, he could. I'm going to just say like 1,600 and then like 10 touchdowns, but still, top end wide receiver numbers. We're talking like Jamar Chase. We're talking Cooper Kupp if he's healthy. Super elite wide receiver. I understand people really, really like their running backs in our league, and I get it, and I'm happy everybody paid at cost mostly for running backs this year. But when you come to the elite, like the best of the best, you ought to pay for them, especially even if it's at another position, like especially at wide receiver. So, and I think we mostly paid for them, like with Jamar Chase and like Cooper Kupp, and what is it? I just did Eileen's team, and she paid for like Tyreek Hill was 63, but Jefferson for 57 is just wild, wild. So 37th nomination, 67, Jahmyr Gibbs. Oh boy. All right. So, I mean, running backs are going for a lot. I feel that. Yeah. But do I like this pick? Not really. I think Gibbs is good. I think he's definitely overdrafted in real life. Like, the Lions trade back and took him at 11 overall, 12 overall. But he's only like 5'9" and like 200 pounds. And even if he does take the I guess the DeAndre Swift role, and he steals some of the touchdowns that Jamal Williams has, and David Montgomery isn't eating into his target share. It's a ton of money to drop on someone who's not like the standalone like guy. Like Eckler went for $10 more, Barkley went for $1 more, Christian McCaffrey went for 13 more. Josh Jacobs went for $2 more. Chubb went for like $7 more. I mean, Bijan went for, what was it to Patrick? Yeah, Bijan went for like $6 more. I would have taken all of those guys over Gibbs just because them paying Montgomery means Montgomery's probably getting the touchdowns, and we don't like that. He's not going to be. I mean, I'm not even sure if Gibbs will get 200 carries. For him to be like that upper echelon top 5 running back, he's got to get around 325 touches. He might get 175 carries and like 50 receptions, but that's only 225 touches. Like, that's 100 short of where we would need him to be elite. So this is a huge, huge amount of money on an unknown. And unlike Bijan, we don't know if the Lions are really going to use him that much. Even if you want to say, oh, well, you know, he'll take the Jamal Williams role last year. Well, Williams didn't get a whole lot of rushes. He got a lot of touchdowns, which were real handy, but he didn't run the ball really all that much for a lot of yards. So he didn't touch the ball that much because he was in a timeshare. And Jahmyr Gibbs is in a timeshare. And David Montgomery went for real cheap in comparison. Montgomery went for $13, and Gibbs went for $67. That's a huge amount of money. And if you could combine them two, then yeah, you have the number one fantasy back. But you're not going to. Like, the one thing to Montgomery's credit is he usually, he's missed some games, but he usually plays most of the season. So I think Gibbs is good. I think he's elusive. I think they'll use him as a pass-catching back. I understand last year he had, in the last couple of years in Alabama, he had over 104 receptions. So he's got an elite offensive line, but really I think he's a rock solid number 2 RB. I don't think he's a top 10 RB just because he's not going to get the workload. So, and I think that really limits his ceiling. I think he's going to be borderline top 10. But that's a lot to pay for that. Is Jahmyr Gibbs better than Aaron Jones? I mean, Aaron Jones is in a timeshare himself with A.J. Dillon. That's part of the reason why he only went for 49. But would I rather have Aaron Jones at 49 than Gibbs at 67? Yeah, because chances are they're probably Jones is probably going to have more workload than Gibbs is, if I'm being honest. So, yeah, don't love that. All that cash savings we had on Jefferson, we just spent it all on Gibbs. So that's the first real suspicious RB pay that I've seen. 58th nomination, $30 Javonte Williams. What do we like? What do we don't like? So I like Javonte Williams. I said it last year. I thought he was really talented. I think getting Sean Payton will really help him. He had a nasty injury. Basically tore his whole leg, ACL, LCL, MCL, all of it. So basically the J.K. Dobbins injury from 2 years ago. And Dobbins, when he came back a year later, was not the same. We'll see if he's the same now 2 years later. But I like Javonte. He's only 23. He has a lot of Alvin Kamara-like things about him. I think Peyton wants that role for him. But I'm real hesitant coming off a huge injury like that. How much are we going to use him? We brought in a pretty competent backup in Samaje Perine, too. And I don't really know why we didn't get the handcuffs either. I mean, I guess we used a lot of the money up front, but I'm still Perine couldn't have gone for that much. Yeah, Perine went for $3 later on in the draft. Why did we spend this money? Why didn't we get him? Because chances are Perine's going to play quite a bit to begin the season, because I really question how healthy Javonte Williams' knee is. They might say it's oh, he looks really good in practice. I haven't seen him in the preseason. I haven't really seen much of him in practice. He's there. He's running. But, he tore his ACL in week 4, so we're 11 months out. So, I mean, that's around the timeline. But it's super risky coming off that devastating an injury. And especially in a timeshare. Again, we're in a timeshare. I think Perine's a good player. He's not great. He's been Joe Mixon's backup. And if Javonte was healthy, he'd just be the handcuff. But he's probably going to play quite a bit early on because I don't think Javonte's all that healthy. So we'll say maybe 200 carries, 800 yards, 8 touchdowns. It's a good season. That's top 20-ish, top 25-ish running back. So that's a good season, and I like him. When he's fully healthy, he's going to be great. And paying for him at $30, you're paying for him at cost because of the injury. He'd probably go for double if he was healthy, if I'm honest. But how healthy is he? I'm very hesitant to say he's 100% right now. Maybe he's like 80%. Also, if you throw him out there and he's not 100%, high degree of him re-injuring that knee. So, yeah. Okay. Kind of going on the ropes. And 71 nominations, $16. Cam Akers. Good old Cam Akers. Oh boy. All right. Cam Akers had a real interesting season last year. So, like, I remember he was on, like, Lauren's team, and she spent, like, 41. Olivia spent, like, 41 on him to be the number 2 back. And then he basically didn't get any touches the first game. And then he was gone for, like, a month. And then they were trying to trade him. And then he's going on different teams in our league. And then basically from week 13 on, with Matthew Stafford hurt, with Cooper Kupp hurt, with Allen Robinson, like, not there, basically. Like, they're just not feeding him. We're putting in Baker Mayfield off the street. It was the Cam Akers show. He was the fifth best running back in fantasy. And that was for the final 5 weeks of the season. Now, how much do we buy into that? Our league didn't really buy into it. We saw this story before. If you want to go back, we can go back a year. A year ago in this draft, we saw Rashad Penny, and he was excellent for the last 6 weeks of the season for the Seahawks, and he's the number 1, and they've drafted Kenneth Walker, but we still like Penny, and Penny had a good, basically 5 weeks of the season last year, 6 weeks of the season, and then Sarah drops him, and then he gets hurt, or drops Kenneth Walker, then Penny gets hurt, and then it's the Kenneth Walker show. So, do I think Akers going to get hurt? No. It's not the injuries with him, unlike Rashad, and he had a really good season. He's finally fully back from his torn Achilles from 2 years ago. So, is all the burst back? Not really, but, a lot of it's back. However, and this is like the caveat, how much do we buy into the late season of the run when nobody's there and nothing really matters and we're just trying to, like, tank for a good draft pick? Like, Stafford wasn't there. Cooper Kupp wasn't there. Most of the O-line wasn't there. Allen Robinson wasn't there. Of course they had to feed Cam Akers. There was nobody there. So now, everybody's healthy. Sean McVay is back. The same issues we had last year, which were just like, does Cam Akers really catch the ball that much? Newsflash, last year, whole season, 13 receptions. No, he doesn't catch the ball like at all. Like at all. So, not a good pass blocker either. Is there anyone else there? Sonny Michel's retired. Darrell Henderson Jr. is a free agent. I think the backup's Kyren Williams. You also did not get the handcuff to Cam Akers, who was also free. Kyren Williams had been a free agent up until today. So, not sure about that, not getting the backup, especially since McVay said glowing things about Williams coming into the season. I think Akers is like a borderline top 20 running back based on like workload. I think getting him for $16 is like a good value. I think getting him like, is he in a vacuum? Is he better than like Khalil Herbert who went for 15? I would say yes. In a vacuum, do I think he's like better than, we'll say, Alexander Madison who went for 29? Yeah, I would say so. He's a better rusher. In a vacuum, would I say he's better than like DeAndre Swift, who's always been not healthy? Yeah, and Swift went for 21. So in a vacuum, Akers is a value, and getting him for $16. But I don't know if you were the right team to get that value, if that makes sense. Like, there's a lot of like injury risk with this team. A lot of injury risk. And we'll get into that later. But already with Javonte. And while Akers wasn't injured last year, he was injured the year before with an Achilles. And maybe he's fully recovered. But last year was such a weird, like, oh, I'm not a part of the offense, so I'm missing for a month. Oh, I want to trade. Oh, here I am, and nobody else is here. I think McVay's great. I think they'll use him, but I don't think he's going to get what he got in the last 5 weeks. I mean, there's other people now. He's not the focus of the offense. So I guess for 16 it's not bad. I'm just surprised you're the team kind of jumping with it, especially because he was so up and down last year. Nobody trusted him. I think he'll get like 800 yards, 8 touchdowns. If that sounds pretty similar to Javonte, I mean, that's because it kind of is. So I think he's a good player, though. Getting him at a value of 16, I think it's good. Like, you're one of the few. I mean, I myself, if Jonathan Taylor comes back and Alvin Kamara is like there, I am hoping to use 3 starting running backs. You're one of the few teams that's also probably going to use like 3 starting running backs. I think Mac's another one, but there's not a lot of them this year. So yeah, I like the value. I just don't know if you were the right. I would have been more comfortable taking someone else if I had been you, especially with like Herbert and stuff. But I get it. A value at running back's a value anyway. $5 on George Kittle. I mean, y'all taking a lot of tight ends. This is part of the reason why I'm waiting to do like Brian and Lawrence. I'm waiting to do Brian's because he's going to make a bunch of moves. I'm waiting to do Lawrence because she has to make a bunch of moves. So that's why they're mostly towards the back end. But this is kind of the thing with like tight ends. I mean, Kittle was really good last year. He was the number 2 tight end in fantasy, so he was usable. But I think that was more to do with like his touchdowns. He scored 11 touchdowns, which is like the most at tight end. And he was scoring like 10 points, so he was like a starting tight end. And like I said before, we want like the top 8 tight ends or so that are usable in fantasy. But he really, his production really went down once McCaffrey showed up. So like, Kittle's maybe the 4th guy on the team now, because there's McCaffrey, there's Deebo Samuel, there's Brandon Ayuk. I guess I don't mind it for the value, just to find out if he can keep up the touchdown production, but I think there's going to be serious regression. I think he's going to score like half the amount of touchdowns, like 5. He'll get around the same yards, which are like 750 or so, and then same amount of receptions, like 60, but serious touchdown regression. And that would take him from like the 2nd best tight end to like the 8th, and we're in that zone of, is he usable and keepable? And I don't know if using $5 on him is great, but you kind of made up for it in the next pick, so I'll just pretend Kittle's like $1, because the next pick is 103 Terry McLaurin for $6. I don't know how Terry McLaurin fell to your team for $6. I don't know what people were doing. Terry McLaurin is like at least a $15 player. If Mike Williams is going for like $14, how the hell is Terry McLaurin going for $6? Like, I am sorry. Terry McLaurin's great. He's had nobody to throw him the ball. Even if I don't think Sam Howell, who the quarterback is in Washington, is good, because I know nothing. He's like a 5th-round pick a year ago. He's looked all right in the preseason, whatever. But even if he's like nothing, McLaurin's been doing this with nobody at quarterback for a while now. So, yeah, he's never had a top 12 like fantasy season, but he's like the 15th best wide receiver and like every single year. And I don't like, even if I don't really like Howell, and even if I think Jahan Dotson's going to steal some of the touches, he's still going to get his 1,000 yards. He's still going to get like his like 6 or 7 touchdowns. He's still going to be like a top 20-ish receiver. So like, how the hell are we going to like, I don't know. I don't know how Mike Evans is a $14 receiver. I don't know how Chris Godwin's a $17 receiver. I don't know how Deontay Johnson's like a $19 receiver. I don't know how DK Metcalf is like freaking $35, and yet McLaurin's $6. McLaurin is in that same tier of receiver just as those guys. He may be even better than some of those guys. And he's way less. Like, way less. His price tag was at least 20. At least 20. And he got 6. Like, come on now. Really, guys? Really? I know it's Washington, but, like, he's been doing this with nobody. Like, Dwayne Haskins, Ryan Fitzpatrick for a couple games, Carson Wentz last year. Like, it doesn't matter who the quarterback is. It's scary Terry McLaurin. Um, he does it with nobody. So, if Sam Howell is even decent, even average, McLaurin will have an outstanding year because he'll actually have someone competent giving him the ball. I don't I don't know how you did it. I don't know what grace you did between Jefferson and McLaurin. I have no clue. But good on you, because you got basically two superstar receivers at the top of your league, and they went for way, way less than they ought to. They should have cost you like 90. You spent like 63. Like, that's crazy. I don't know. I guess everybody else was just drunk at the wheel, but you basically got two of the best, like, biggest steals of the draft, for sure. McLaurin and Jefferson. Like, not even close. No one else has an argument. I know they're receivers. I know other receivers went for high. I know we weren't that high on receiver, but, like, how? What were y'all doing? Like, if I had known McLaurin would have slipped that little, I would have kept some money at the beginning, and I would have spent on him. But then if I'd known what everything with Jonathan Taylor, I would have probably spent half of what I spent on Jonathan Taylor. So, still, it's wild you got him for $6. 108th nomination, $3, Rashad Penny. I already mentioned Rashad Penny a little bit earlier. 6 great games, then he gets hurt. So he is on the Eagles now, so elite offensive line. He's an elite rusher. He averages close to 6 yards per carry since he got drafted, which is like better than Aaron Jones. All right, Aaron Jones is the second most efficient guy since he got drafted in yards per carry. You know who number one is? Rashad Penny. But the problem is he's never healthy. So, yeah, I think he's only had like 337 carries. Yeah, the number, on the dot. 337 carries in 5 years. It's not good. So that's usually like one season. That's less than Najee Harris had in his rookie year. He's not much of a pass catcher at all. So he's not going to get that from you. That's going to be Swift. He's in a timeshare, and he's an injury-prone guy in a timeshare. I think he's kind of like maybe the Eagles can kind of coax out of him to stay healthy the whole year. But I'm real hesitant about it because we've been doing this 5 years in a row. Like, at some point, it's just like you are who you are. So, do I mind it for $3? No. I think, he might pop off early on, and if he does, and you're just like, oh, I want to keep him, he's real great, you trade him. Trade him. If someone's dumb enough to think it's real, trade him. Because there ain't no way he's staying healthy the whole season. You are who you are at some point. Like, ain't no way. I don't believe it. That's why he went for $3. He's a better running back than that, but that's not the issue. His health is never, ever, ever healthy. So, which again, why are we picking Rashad Penny when we have Javonte Williams? I don't know. Why after Cam Akers? I don't know. But he ain't ever healthy. So if he pops off for 4 or 5 weeks of seasons, like, oh, he's really good, he looks so great, he ain't going to stay healthy. I don't care if he looks like Jesus and he can walk on water, he's going to eventually go on IR. So I wish you luck. I wish you the best. He ain't going to stay healthy. It's just, it's not going to happen. So $5, $126, your old favorite Michael Thomas. Boy, we got a lot of guys who are just like injury-prone dudes. Since his basically like record-breaking like 2019 season, where he set the single-season record for most receptions at like 153. He hasn't been healthy. It's 2023 now, so that's 4 years ago. I think with Derek Carr's a good player. Last year when he was playing, he was getting touches. He played in 3 games? But in 3 years, he's played 10 games out of a possible 50. It's not a lot. So, I think he'll be a good player if he's healthy. For the price, I guess I'm okay with finding out. Again, I would not count on him being healthy. It's been 4 years, so a little less than Rashad Penny, I guess. But I'll say if he's healthy, he'll get like 700 yards, 5 touchdowns. I don't think he's the number one anymore either. I think Olave is. I think he's the number two. So I mean, he's can't guard Mike is great when he's healthy. He's never healthy. So we'll see, though. I mean, maybe you can run into something. So maybe lightning will strike twice. Dollar nomination 140. Another old friend of yours, Russell Wilson. I mean, good on you for Russell Wilson helping you win a title. Like, he came up for you big in the championship game. But man, was it terrible watching him basically the entire season. He was atrocious. Yeah, he wasn't even good enough to start. He was like the 19th best fantasy quarterback, and you kept him like deep into the regular season. There were games you were losing because you started Russell Wilson. He was so bad. You ought to have been a shoo-in playoff team, but you had to take the wild card because you were hurting yourself by starting Wilson. That's how bad I remember some of his weeks were. He even had a negative week one week. It was so atrociously bad. So the underlying numbers and analytics say he was still like somewhat efficient, but he was just like interceptions, low touchdown total, no rushes, bad scheme, taking lots of sacks. Like it was all not good. So I think getting Sean Payton there will help him. I think Sean Payton having a similar quarterback like Drew Brees will help him. But it's scary to see someone like that's not even falling off the cliff. Like that's like you're in the water already, kind of fall from the cliff. It wasn't a fall at all. He's in the water. He looks like a backup. So just bad, like real bad. So I mean, hopefully Payton can turn him around. Hopefully the offensive line is good. Jerry Jeudy's already hurt, so we know about Jerry Jeudy's hurt. Was it KJ Hamlin, who was another wide receiver there? So he has a heart ailment, so he's out. Tim Patrick tore his ACL, so he's out. I mean, they drafted Marvin Mims in the second round. I kind of like him, but I'm still just like, yeah. I hope this year you give it like I wouldn't even give him half a season. I give him like 5 games. If after 5 games he's not a top 14 quarterback, then you need to cut him. I'm sorry. That's the truth. He was that bad last year. And that's a month's worth of playtime will tell me if Payton has turned it around, because he's had all off season to work with everyone, all off season to work with Payton. And if Payton doesn't believe in him, then there's nothing else I need to see. He's cooked. So, but maybe Payton can coax it out of him. Maybe there's something still there. I hope for your sake there is. I think because Payton's such an excellent coach, I think Wilson will be okay. I don't think he will be great. I think he'll be in the Dak Prescott, the worse than Kirk Cousins, the Tua range, but that will be a giant improvement over where he was last year, which was like, I'm going to be Zach Wilson some weeks. Like, that bad. Like, Dak Prescott is a shining example of what I am not kind of bad. So, I hope for your sake that he is good. I think he will be a back-end top 10. If Payton can make it work, maybe we can get even higher, but I got to see it because I can't express how hesitant I am about Wilson. Getting him for $1 is nice, but I hope you're watching free agency like a hawk, and I hope you're paying attention to your quarterback, because if after a month I'm like, oh, he's putting up like 5 points a game, cut him. Just get rid of him. It's not happening. It's not working. I don't care. Quarterback's easy to fill. Just pick somebody. I don't like Daniel Jones. Daniel Jones got paid $140 million last year. You know why? Because Brian Daboll made him, with his stupid 15 touchdown throws, look like a competent quarterback, and that was better than Russell Wilson by a lot. Not a little, by a lot. So, give it a month. We'll see. We've seen him. He's a Hall of Fame quarterback. It sucks to see someone kind of just like tailspin like this. It's been a while, like kind of like Donovan McNabb, just quick, But still, nosedive. Last year was a nosedive. So now we're hoping we can kind of like scale the cliff even just a little bit, just to get halfway to maybe where we were. I don't know if it'll happen, but getting him for $1, like, you can't really complain, but I'm still real hesitant about it. 154 nomination, Adam Thielen. I said before in a video, I think Thielen's cooked. That's why Minnesota let him go. He had some top 10 fantasy seasons basically sprinkled in. I would say that it had more to do with like Justin Jefferson helping him and him leading the league in touchdowns one year with 17. I remember that. But he's missed, what is it? Yeah, he played all 17 games last year. He had 70 receptions, about 700 yards, 6 touchdowns, so solid. But he's like the number 2 receiver in Carolina. Part of the reason why Minnesota let him go is just because he's not as healthy as he used to be, even though he played all the games last year. He's older. He doesn't get the separation. Doesn't have the speed. I think he's on like among one of the worst wide receiving cores in the league, maybe around where Tennessee is, but Tennessee got DeAndre Hopkins, so they might be the worst. He's going to start opposite of Chark, I guess, trying to see if he's still got some of that Minnesota magic from a couple of years ago, from when he was paired with Stephon Diggs, and then he was paired with Justin Jefferson, and you're hoping he can help develop like Jonathan Mingo. So I get the signing, but he's past his prime. He's looked to slip a lot. I think we're only going to get like 550 yards and maybe 3 touchdowns, and he's maybe like a top 40-ish receiver. So lucky for you, it's just $1. You can keep him on your bench, find out, see, and we'll see what happens. 178, $2. You sniped him from me. You took Zach Moss. I've always been a fan of Zach Moss. It didn't work out in Buffalo. They dumped him for Naheem Hines last year. But I always thought he had some like really good qualities about him, which was his ability to like power through runs and be very efficient, especially when he was at Utah coming out. What does that all mean? Well, when Jonathan Taylor was out last year, he was pretty good. He got 69 touches, over 300 yards, but he wasn't like a top 30. Like he basically didn't touch the ball as a pass catcher. He could not catch. So if Taylor's gone for like the first 4 weeks, which he is, he has a broken arm, so I'm not sure if he's actually going to be the starter. I could see him being like the rusher, but Indy's not good. Like, Indy's currently got 3 running backs and 3 wide receivers and a rookie quarterback. I don't think they're going to be running the ball a whole lot without Jonathan Taylor, and I think they're going to be down in a lot of games with a rookie quarterback with a 55% completion percentage who also wants to run the ball quite a bit. So I think Moss is fine. I don't really know why we're taking the guy with a broken arm on a team with Rashaad Penny and Michael Thomas and Javonte Williams and Cam Akers. You see a theme, guys? There's a theme here. So I guess you wanted him because he's on Indy, and he may start without Jonathan Taylor. But Jonathan Taylor makes that offense work. So even if he is starting, it's not really great. I can't imagine him. It doesn't really help you because, you're not going to play him anyway. You have Javonte Williams, Gibbs, and Akers, and by the time one of them gets hurt, let's say they get hurt, I don't know, we'll say week 6. Moss won't be the starter anymore. I'm sure they might have traded Jonathan Taylor, they might have signed Kareem Hunt, maybe they picked up Fournette. I don't know. But I don't think Moss is going to start the whole year. He just doesn't have that kind of. He doesn't have that kind of. He's never had that workload. The team's not very good, and I don't know if he's really got the talent. And they are trying to win, even if it is with a rookie quarterback, because there's a difference between Arizona tanking for a high pick and Indy with a rookie quarterback already trying not to get the rookie quarterback killed. So, yeah, I don't know why you did that. I don't know why we took another injured player. You could have used the $2 on your own handcuffs. And yeah, okay. Um, we took Cordero Patterson for $1 at 210. I mean, I remember he's a favorite of yours. He was a breakout player a couple years ago. He was like the ninth best fantasy player in 2021. But he didn't get a ton of touches last year just because he's older now. Tyler Algier got over 1,000 yards, and they just drafted Bijan Robinson at the 8th overall pick for the Falcons. So he's like the number 3-ish running back, and they use him all over the field as kind of like a gadget player. But I think with Bijan now there, Patterson's going to get like less touches, so he maybe gets like 100 touches and like 400 yards, and then maybe 25 receptions and 200 yards. He just doesn't see much playtime anymore because he's an older player and they use him to try and close out games. So he's like a top 40-ish running back. But if something happens to both Robinson and Algier, I mean, I guess he has value then, but I don't think running back has a high attrition rate, but it's super rare to have both your starter and your backup get hurt for an extended period of time. It might happen, but an extended period of time is very rare. I just jumped because I saw a bug, and I'll have to get that in a minute. But, yeah. I mean, I like Cordero Patterson. Oh, what am I doing? I'm being really dumb. I have this. I like Cordero Patterson. I'm happy for him finding a home in Atlanta. I think they're just trying to tape down on like their usage of him and use him only when they need him. So, yeah, I mean, I guess for $1 you can find out if they use him more. Not great though. After that, we've dropped, an extra linebacker we were carrying, and we picked up Chase Claypool. Claypool's like the slot receiver in Chicago now. He got traded for a second-round pick to the Steelers, which was a mistake by Chicago to do that. He really, really struggled. I think he only had like 14 receptions in his last 7 games in Chicago. And between him, Cole Kmet, Darnell Mooney, and DJ Moore, I feel like they're going to be scraping for touches because this is the Justin Fields show, and in the Justin Fields show, we run the ball. So I think he's just a guy, maybe 600 yards, maybe 4 touchdowns. I don't know. Between Patterson and Claypool, I'd much rather get somebody with some upside. Like there's no upside here, really. They're just old veteran players that are in offenses that don't really feature them anymore, which is sad to say. So overall, what do I think? Well, this team's super weird. Last year you did the McCaffrey and Derrick Henry show, and you were kind of hurting, and you hung on for Russell Wilson too long, but it did work out. McCaffrey gets traded, you get to start Deontay Foreman, you have Amari Cooper, and it really gets the ball rolling, and you just wreck people in the playoffs. It worked. I will say this year, again, short leash for Wilson. I really, really like the duo of Jefferson McLaurin. It's really just very injury team, though. Kittle's already injured. Zach Moss is injured. Rashad Penny's always injured. Cam Akers, I hope, is fully back from his Achilles tear 2 years ago. I hope Javonte Williams is back from his ACL, MCL, LCL tear from last year. I hope Russell Wilson's back. There's a lot of hope. I also don't like Russell Wilson's the QB for the Denver Broncos. Javonte Williams is the running back for the Denver Broncos. I don't like pairing my QBs and my running backs. Just like I don't like pairing my running backs and wide receivers on the same team, same thing with QBs and RBs, because it's rare that a QB is going to throw the ball to an RB for touchdowns. You're limiting your ceiling, because if one guy's scoring, the other guy's not. So, don't love that. I definitely would consider, I guess I would say move Javonte, but really what we're saying is if Wilson doesn't have it after a month, you got to cut him. It's time. So, but yeah, I guess you can keep Javonte in that scenario because you'll get a new quarterback anyway since you got Wilson for $1. But I mean, Jefferson McLaurin's real good. I guess with Gibbs and Javonte, you can really make some noise. And if Akers is actually healthy and touches the ball like 20 times a game, and McVay's actually feeding him, it'll work. And if Rashad Penny's somehow healthy and Michael Thomas somehow healthy, this will work. But it's a super old team. This is the oldest team in the league, in our league, not by a little, by a lot. Yeah, George Kittle, Patterson. I mean, C.J. Mosley, even on the defense. So Russell Wilson. I don't know. I mean, for you, it's kind of like everyone. I've said a lot of championship aspirations. I mean, for you, you're just. I think you're a back end playoff team. I think you'll probably sneak in. I think it was a mistake not to get the handcuffs. I mean, last year you got the handcuff to McCaffrey, and it really, really worked out. You didn't get the handcuffs to any of your guys this year. Not even Kyron Williams, who was free. Yeah, and P. Ryan went for $3. Just, I don't know. I don't like that. I would have definitely wanted to do that, especially because this year, even more so than last year, you got a ton of injury guys. Just big injury concerns, like injury flag, injury flag, injury flag. That's like over half the team. So there's a lot of the ceiling is the team's very, very good, maybe like a top 5 team. The floor is much lower than other teams, which is just like, I'm going to lose guys in like 3 weeks, and I got to kind of put it together. Again, I think you're a back end playoff team. There's going to be some weeks that Jefferson and Jefferson alone will win you because he's that good. But I don't. You're gonna have to really piece this one together because it's held by a bunch of duct tape. So I'll give you a C plus. I'll give you a C plus. It's a little better than average. It's not super above average. I'm not giving you a B, which is above average, just because we really, really could have protected ourselves a lot better on the back end than we did on the front end. But I think the team is genuinely good. And I think the team will be in the playoffs, and I think you'll make some noise. But you're going to have a very hard time getting another title with this team. Because, I mean, just based off history, like, this team, not everybody's going to stay healthy. Ain't no way. Like, ain't no way Rashad Penny's going to make a whole season. Ain't no way Michael Thomas is going to make a whole season. Ain't no way Javonte Williams is healthy right now. Like, I'm telling you. Ain't no way Adam Thielen's making a whole season. Like, ain't no way Zach Moss is making a whole season. Like, we can go down the board on this team. So, I like the team, but it's like, before we've said your team's like a glass cannon, this team is not the glass cannon. This team is team hospital. Like, if everybody's healthy and it's working, like, kumbaya, but it's held together by duct tape. Like, we might fly, we might burn. So I'm not really sure what to make of it, to be honest. But it's like a back-end playoff team. It's genuinely a good team. And if you can kind of figure out Wilson and everybody stays healthy, it'll work. But I think you had a tough draft because you took guys that you are familiar with, but you took but there's a reason why all those guys fell. And it's also real interesting, again, that you didn't, like, bother getting any of the guys to protect yourself at running back, especially. Especially because they were so cheap. I mean, David Montgomery, 13, okay, maybe, that's a little bit much. But, like, between P. Ryan going for 3 and Kyron Williams being free, we definitely could have used that instead of Cordero Patterson or Zach Moss or Adam Thielen, or George Kittle. You would have been in a much better place. So I think the team's good. I think you'll start out the year, probably have a pretty strong start, but you're just going to have to watch and make sure, like, everybody stays healthy. And I don't envy you, man. It's going to be a lot of work. You're going to have a hard time repeating, but I think you're a threat. So, I mean, and that's good enough. You're a threat playoff team. No one's going to want to see you in the playoffs because you could go off. So, I guess that's enough for you, in a sense, because if you get to the playoffs, you usually find a way. So I guess just get there.